In this class today on United Nations and the word peace, purpose of the class is discuss the achievements of United Nations, its contributions to us, towards the society of states, towards the people of this planet. Among the so many contributions, so many achievements which United Nations has registered to its credit, the purpose is not to chronologically present here. The purpose is to create a sense in you that what United Nations actually meant for us, what it has done for us. That is what I think we should have a picture about. I am sure that develop your own picture with regards to the United Nations. You would also have your own view towards the United Nations when we would, that how much it has done for us, that this organization, how much we need it. What would be the situation when the United Nations is not with us? I am Iqbalur Rahman. I am teaching political science here at Aligarh Muslim University. I welcome you, dear students. United Nations has shaped so much of global cooperation and regulation that we would not recognize our world today without the United Nations' pervasive role in it. So many things it has done for this world by nurturing international cooperation. We need to look at it. The UN was the creation of the states. This is the fact. The states created it. It was created to serve them. Those created it. Its creation was rooted in the legal idea of sovereign equality of its creators and the right of self-defense. It was designed to protect both these, obligating its member states not to interfere in each other's domestic matters. It still operates under the provisions of respect for national sovereignty and non-interference in the domestic affairs of its members. Dear students, in its 80th year of existence, despite the fact that various issues and situations it faced, there is no doubt about it, and dealt with in which its successes were either not as expected by the world community or generally looked upon as failures of the United Nations. We would try to analyze the failures and the successes of the United Nations. We would take the successes first, the record of the successes of the United Nations, its achievements. Without questions, there is no dispute about it, that United Nations is a rule-based system of global collective security. It is a collective security system. When we hear it, it does not sensitize us. Dear students, it is for the first time in the history of human beings that a rule-based comprehensive system of global collective security was created in 1945. This system in itself is a great achievement. Moreover, the UN has succeeded in upholding the sanctity of this system. The League of Nations was the first attempt, was lasted less than 20 years. The United Nations not only has governed peace and security globally for 8 decades, but has successfully survived. UN did not eradicate conflicts around the world. This is the fact. But it has in fact saved the succeeding generation from the scourge of world war that had happened twice in the previous century. Each organization, dear student, has shortcomings. This is true with the United Nations as well. The UN was built on the very historical fact. What is that historical fact? That the peace is dependent upon the cooperation of great powers. They could not be expected to behave like Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, or any state like these states. Great power play determining role in political matters. Right from the beginning, you take any case, any period, they determined, they ruled, they intervened, and of course, this is also true when the United Nations was made. So the peace is dependent upon their cooperation. And this idea was inbuilt, incorporated into the United Nations Security Council. And this keeps manifesting itself when it comes to the functioning of the United Nations, particularly in reference to the maintenance of international peace and security. The greatest achievement of the United Nations in the history of mankind is the regulation of use of force, dear students. Use of force is still altogether not illegal. Throughout the history, it was considered as the prerogative of states. They freely used it without questions as an instrument of their state policy. The United Nations is the system, is the organization that has subjected it to only 2 situations when the use of force will be legal and justified. And these 2 subjections are under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter in Self-Defense, and second is the authorization given by the United Nations Security Council under Chapter 7. Only these 2 situations under which the use of force, the use of violence, going to war is legal, is justified. Simply this contribution of the United Nations is its greatest achievement. For the first time after the First World War, the legality of the war was questioned, and United Nations, when it was created, it subordinated this right of states to certain conditions. Dear students, if you think of it, you would see that this is not a lesser contribution. Never before in the history it has happened. Never before. Of course, decolonization is the achievement, and it could not be said that decolonization happened because of the United Nations. But we cannot also say that the United Nations did not help the decolonization of these societies. The idea of racial equality and of the people's right to self-determination was discussed in the wake of the First World War and rejected. What it was? Racial equality and the people's right of self-defense at the time of the League of Nations was rejected. After the World War II, these principles were endorsed within the United Nations system, and the Trusteeship Council was created to monitor the process of decolonization. It was one of the initial bodies of the UN. In 1960, the General Assembly adopted a declaration on the granting of independence to colonial countries and peoples, known as the Declaration of Decolonization. Many national independence movements had owned liberation through bloody conflicts. The United Nations has overseen a process of decolonization that has transformed international politics. In 1945, around 1/3 of the world's population lived under colonial rule when the United Nations was created. Today, there are less than 2 million people living in the colonies. Peacekeeping, we all know, peacekeeping is the greatest achievement. It was via media. It was a tool which the United Nations, the defining mission of the United Nations is the maintenance of international peace and security, which is accomplished by preempting and preventing conflict and by persuading parties in conflict to make peace and improving the conditions to preserve peace. The Charter establishes that use of force is only lawful either in self-defense or, if authorized by the UN Security Council, the Security Council's 5 permanent members, dear students, China, US, United Kingdom, Russia and France can veto any such resolution which is undertaken under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. Despite this, the United Nations' consistent role in seeking to manage conflict is one of its greatest successes. A key component of this is peacekeeping. Due partly to United Nations conflict resolution and peacekeeping initiatives, the number of people dying in conflict has declined since 1945. Worldwide, fewer people died in the conflict in the first decade of the 21st century than any decade in the previous 20th century. So peacekeeping is one of the tools available to the United Nations to address the conflicts, to resolve the conflicts, to achieve the peace, and this has been a successful experiment done by the United Nations. It is not said that all is fine with the peacekeeping, but overall, if we take into account the contribution of United Nations in reference to peacekeeping activities, it has registered tremendous successes. When it comes to the question of human rights, it is beyond doubts that it is the United Nations that has created a awareness about what human rights are. And not only awareness, it is the United Nations through the efforts of it, the different constitutions of the member states of United Nations, they have incorporated human rights in their respective constitutions. The Human Rights Declaration of 1948 for the first time set out fundamental human rights to be universally protected, recognizing that the inherent dignity and of the recognizing inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of the freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Dear students, since 1948, 10 human rights treaties have been adopted, including the Conventions on the Rights of Children and Migrant Workers, against torture and discrimination based on gender and race, each monitored by its own committee of independent experts. The language of human rights has created a new framework for thinking about the relationship between individual, state, and the international system. This is because of the contribution of the United Nations, dear student, that man has become the priority. Focus from state is drifting towards man. State, in the name of sovereignty and security, cannot commit various crimes like war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, etc., violation of human rights is questionable when states indulge into violation in the name of sovereignty and security. So this right is not absolute. States have to justify their actions before the international community. So they carry now the accountability attached to their actions. They are sovereign. The sovereignty is not absolute. Because of the role which the United Nations has played in this matter, the sovereignty is subjected to certain norms where states stand accountable. This is not a lesser achievement for the people of this planet. Law of Sea, of course, is an achievement, contribution made by the United Nations, negotiated between 1973 and 1982. The United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea set up the current international law of the seas. It defines states' rights and creates concepts such as exclusive economic zones as well as procedures for the settling of disputes, new arrangements for governing deep sea bed mining, and importantly, new provisions for the protection of marine resources and ocean conservation. The states have abided by the conventions. There are various disputes that China has over the East and the South China Sea, which present a conflict between power and law, and the mechanism that law of sea creates for resolving disputes. A powerless state is not necessarily going to submit to these mechanisms, as we have seen that the peace depends upon the great powers' cooperation. So in matters of law of sea, they are not going to submit that way, to which they have agreed, of course, but they remain reluctant when it comes to the question of completely abiding by the law, abiding by the conventions. Counter-terrorism Terrorism, we all very concerned about it. The states are concerned. People are concerned. It is a threat. Of course it is a threat. The international terrorism after 9/11 was described by the United Nations Security Council as a threat to international peace and security. Though it was not described as armed attack on the United States of America, the United States of America itself decided that it was attack on it, and it used the force in terms of self-defense under Article 51 of the United Nations. And for the first time in the history of NATO, its Article 5 was invoked, and NATO had taken action against the Taliban government. But dear students, what United Nations has done? United Nations is an institution which right from the beginning has involved itself into matters of terrorism. It has adopted a counter-terrorist strategy to which all states agreed. It is based on 4 pillars, and other than this, the problematic area is that what is terrorism? The United Nations, because of the conflicting positions taken by the states, its members, no agreed definition of what constitutes terrorism is adopted by the United Nations. But at the same time, it has adopted a number of conventions which define what activities are terrorist activities. So, this is a huge contribution on the part of the United Nations to deal with this issue of terrorism which we face every day, and the world also is concerned about it, and the United Nations has declared it as a threat to international peace and security. Dear student, climate change is of course a very concerned issue for us. The existence of the United Nations has created a forum where nations can discuss new problems, and climate change is one of them. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was set up in 1988 to assess climate science and provide policymakers with assessment and options. In 1992, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change created a permanent forum for negotiations. One of the principal objectives of the United Nations is to solve economic, social, cultural, humanitarian issues through international cooperation. United Nations does this through a very comprehensive system which it has evolved over a period of time in the context of situation as and when they became concerned for the international community. It addresses these questions which concern the humanitarian development, human development through ECOSOC, through specialized agencies, and the various kinds of the institutions it has created to resolve this issue. The UN at its agencies, have had success in coordinating global efforts against diseases. Not naming them here, but I'm trying to make a picture before you that in matters of human development, the United Nations role is not only limited to addressing the issue of diseases, which come up, which happened before, smallpox, AIDS, Ebola, cholera, influenza, and so many things, and the recent one, the COVID-19. But question is that human does so many things in matters of human welfare. Its role we cannot overlook. We cannot. It cannot be just wished away, dear students. Not only this, that it deals with the questions of peace and security, it also deals with the human welfare. And not only these two things, all issues which are interrelated, like chemical weapons, like nuclear weapons, like similar things like disarmament. United Nations is there. It is dealing with the issues, dealing with the questions which we have, and it is trying to answer them. It would not suffice here if I say that United Nations contributions are without problems. Of course, it is the agency of the states, and it serves the purposes of its members. But the fact is, United Nations is the organization we simply cannot imagine the world without United Nations. You ask a question to yourself, if the pillars of the day, pillars on which the society of state is built upon, they are the pillars of sovereignty, and they are the pillars of non-interference. You take these out, they are broken. There is no respect for these two things, which are the backbone of the United Nations. This society of states would not survive. There would be no rules, there would be no regulations, there would be no governance. The things which the United Nations has actually institutionalized, it has institutionalized the politics, it has institutionalized the governance, it has institutionalized everything to be addressed through cooperation, and it has provided a platform of itself where states can sit down and hammer out their differences to create a unified, agreed position which they face. So without this system, if it is not with us, what would be the outcome? We simply can imagine. We simply can imagine that a society without regulations, without rules, and without agreements, we think of it. And a society, a institution which has contributed for this purpose, it has its utility for all of us, despite the fact that it has faced problems, despite the fact that it has also failed in some respect. For today, I stop here. Thank you.